Ever wonder why no one seems to be watching your videos? Persuasion is an exercise in empathy, which is why facts don't always persuade, and your testimony on camera is one of the biggest untapped resources at your disposal. At this month's Business Blend, I'm going to be going over what every business ought to know about getting your message out there through the power of persuasive storytelling on video.
Thank you, Adam and Pullman Marketing, for having me out here. These events are fantastic, and it's great to be a part. I'm kind of curious, who here is part of a small business? Show of hands. Okay. Who here is part of a small business that has some sort of social media or online presence? You at least have a website. Okay. Who here is publishing social media at least once in the last year? Awesome. Once in the last month. Okay, of those, how many of you have posted a video? Not enough hands went up. All right, I'm kind of curious why. I'm not here to sell you on video. I'm just here to maybe expand your idea of what your entry point is and how easy it can be to be very persuasive using our most persuasive tool in our toolbox. So, somewhere over here, tell me what most intimidates you about putting video on the internet?
Having my face on it.
Having your face on it. That's very valid. Somebody else?
Yeah, it's going to be wrong, or it's going to expose, or somebody's going to...
It's vulnerable,
yeah.
Right? Interesting. So nobody said time and nobody said equipment, which is really good to hear, right? That means that smartphones work, right? Everyone recognizes that if you wanted to post a video, you could. I just want to tell a little story about some things that I've worked on and some things I've learned in the last 15 years, or well, I'll just say 5 years. I started making videos in the late 90s, back when it was really, really hard and really, really expensive. And I look at just how easy it is to put something on the internet today, and I'm like, oh man, I would have killed for that when I was in high school or college. Super easy now. I have put thousands of hours into videos, and I have put minutes into videos. And I can tell you with confidence, there is no correlation between how much work you put into a project and how well it pays off. Which is super, super humbling. Super humbling. So Adam referenced a project that I was a part of 10 years ago working for President Elson Floyd. They had a need to raise a whole bunch of money right at the time when the 2009, 2008 economic crash happened, and the state government gutted the budget. So there was suddenly nobody to work on the project, and the need was really high. And just so happens that our university loves young, hungry people who they don't have to pay very much. That was me. And myself and a couple others stepped into the void, and we came up with a messaging for this campaign that successfully raised $1 billion. And during that time, I had video projects that I must have put 200 to 300 hours into. We finessed that message, and it worked, and it was awesome. And that led to other work, that led to other opportunities, doors that opened, other capital campaigns, businesses I've worked with, hospitals, associations. It's been great. And then one day I was discovering something that a lot of us did during the pandemic, a little app called TikTok. And it was kind of, taking off. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. I should make some videos. And I made some videos, and I spent an evening on them. And one day, I opened up my phone and saw, oh wow, people are watching this video. People are, oh, that's cool, I put it down. I pick it back up, the number had doubled in the time it took me to have lunch. And it just kept going up and just kept going up. And so I started posting more often, and I very quickly realized more people are seeing these stupid little TikToks than anything else I'd ever made in my career. That was humbling, because the amount of work that went into it was not the same at all. And we can talk about algorithms, we can talk about how to, how do you go viral and all that, and honestly, most of it's luck. But at the end of the day, I learned some things about my process that helped kind of eliminate some of the pretension of video production, because I'm very much into the theory of communication and how do you figure out your persuasion funnel and all that. And I realized there's a couple things that that just automatically work at any time and make video uniquely useful when it comes to promoting your business, your cause, or prompting people to action. And the main principle is this: we are hardwired to be attracted to faces. Who remembers who's old enough maybe to remember in the 90s, there was this conspiracy theory that there was a giant carving of a face on Mars. Anybody ever seen that, the face on Mars? Remember that? Okay. Going even further back, the ancients looked up at the moon and said, there's a man on the moon. There's a face up there, right? Well, we now know there is no face on the moon, and the face on Mars turned out to be just a trick of the shadow. But it illustrates the point. We are just naturally attracted to anything that remotely resembles two eyes, a nose, and a smile. It's why you can draw a happy face very abstractly. You can draw like a really sloppy happy face, and a child will still go, oh, happy face. That looks nothing like a person, and yet we all know what that means, right? And so just the act of having your face, the thing that you were most concerned about, that is maybe your most persuasive tool. More than your price list, more than your value proposition, more than the design of your website and whether it loads quick. Like you list all the things that can help you get your word out. There is nothing better than looking someone in the eye and saying, here's what we do. And with video, you have a chance to do that. Specifically with video that has a camera that faces back at you so you can make eye contact with it. Because we're just naturally wired for faces. What would you say, if I had to ask you right now, snap judgment, what's the most persuasive tool, technique, message in the world?
Smile.
A smile? Possibly. Think about all the ways you try to be convinced of something. Vote for me. Buy this product.
Money.
Move to this city. Money. Yeah, incentives work. That's definitely persuasive. We all like to think that we make pragmatic decisions. We like to think that we're rational most of the time and irrational the minority of the time. The truth is, we are wired for relationship. We're wired for affinity. We like to buy from people we know. We like to engage with brands we trust. And so throughout all human history, long before media and long after all this social media nonsense will be gone, the most persuasive thing will always be some form of a testimony. Some form of a testimony. It takes the form of, I once was blank, comma, now I'm blank. That's it. That's it. Before, after. Before, after. You know, I had a really crummy dining room area with this old thin carpet. And then I talked to the great guys at Palouse Floors, and they helped me pick out the right one, and now my kitchen's great. Now, I could have said that exact same message in the form of a price sheet or, like, hey, here's a list of what we offer as a company. But the fact that a third party said, this happened to me, it's a whole different thing, right? Spencer, you could have told that story. You could have said, like, hey, this one person had a crummy kitchen, and then we installed his floors, and now his kitchen's a lot better, right? The power of a testimony. We just are somehow attracted to that. It's why Amazon reviews somehow still work, even though we know they're all written by bots. Right? You still check the reviews, and you're like, oh, there's not enough 5 stars. Maybe I'll buy something else. So the power of the testimony. The easiest way you can do that is by getting out and just talking about what's going on, showing your expertise. And if you can get customers in there to give a third-party testimony, even better. But you as the business operator who's actually selling a product, you get to show your expertise by sharing your testimony. And it can be just as simple as, hey, I'm working on this thing. Here's the impact it was able to have. And I think that the customer's happy. It doesn't have to be elaborate. And you would think that the vulnerability of putting yourself out there, like, oh, it's not quite professional enough. I should have prepped that more. I should have, checked out my wardrobe. The thing is, because it's a person, we actually cut more slack than we would if it was ultra prepared. Just your expectations for perfection go down when it's a person and not a prepared presentation. It's a little counterintuitive because what you shared, like putting my face out there, that's a little scary. What if it's wrong? People don't care if it's wrong. And I know that's not right. It needs to be correct. Actually, it doesn't. Because everyone knows that to err is human. I'm not talking about intentionally deceiving people or lying about you. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that people forgive a lot in person. And I'll give an example. I'm doing this presentation without notes. I'm just kind of extemporaneously talking. And you guys seem to be buying it. I guarantee you this is coming across so much worse on camera right now. the forced perspective, right? You know, and the reason why is because here in person, you don't see me as you know, a anonymous presenter. You see me as just a person talking to you. And so that affinity goes up quite a bit. And even on video, the fact that I'm showing my face gives more affinity for the viewer than if I was an off-screen camera or if I was just reading a prepared statement. There's nothing quite like just sharing your story. I'm going to just rapid fire through some principles that apply anytime you're not only when you're making a video, but really any media project. Number one rule for everything: know your audience. If you get this right, everything else, whether it's video, whether it's just social media marketing, or just communicating live, everything gets better if this is correct. If you know who you're talking to and who you're relating with, right? I don't know everybody in this room. I know a few of you, but I know that I'm with some fellow small business owners. I know that, well, if you're like me, you want to get more leads, better quality leads. You want to spend less time on admin and marketing and more time on doing the stuff, right? Like all of that is going into my presentation. How much of a bummer would it be if I came in here and said, all right, my name is Adam Ratliff. I work at a company called Recraft, and you all should buy my stuff. So, you know, and just start handing out cards as if this was a sales presentation and not a conversation between peers. That would be a misunderstanding of the audience. Second principle that works all the time. Start with, who can finish this thought? Very good. Very good. This was popularized by Simon Sinek in a presentation, a TED Talk he gave about 15 years ago, and now he's made an entire career out of it, which, man, living the dream right there. Give one talk and just, anyway. But it's really true. It's really true. He articulated something that's just always been true. People aren't persuaded by what you do. They're persuaded by why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, because the truth is nobody here is in a unique field. Nobody here is the sole source for what they do. Consumers have options. And sometimes the why is just, I want to help people, and then the relationship is enough. There's plenty of mechanics in town. I go to the one that I've known for 10 years. Is he the best mechanic in town? I don't know. I hear you're pretty good. Congratulations. But honestly, I don't care because I know him, right? And so going back to the original thing about testimonies, it's all about just building that relationship, building that affinity. If people like you, they will buy from you. All right. And then the third thing I kind of already touched on, I actually more open with that, and that is leverage the power of faces. This goes beyond just putting yourself on video. This goes down to the photography you put on your website. This goes down to how you illustrate your projects and your videos. You don't just show the product, you show people using the product. So an example of carpets and floors, you could just do wide shots of your installations, or you could bring in the customers and show their happy smiling faces enjoying the spaces that you've transformed. When we do our company, we do a lot of event photography. Very rarely are we focused on the event itself. We're mostly showing people enjoying themselves. Look for who's having a good time. Who looks like they're having a good time? And you know who you can tell who's having a good time? Whoever's out taking pictures themselves. Anyone who's taking a selfie, anybody who's taking pictures with their friends, okay, they're enjoying it. If they're taking pictures of it, it's because they want to preserve this moment. Let's follow them around and take pictures. Know your audience, start with why, emphasize faces, and you'll be amazed at the persuasive power of that type of storytelling, so much more than most anything else you can put out there. And believe me, you don't know what piece of content you put out there is going to hit. You don't know which one's going to resonate with people. I wish there was a correlation between how much work we put into it and how well it does, but really it comes down to, did I strike a chord with these three things? So that's what I brought. I would love to have some time to answer some questions, or we could have a little discussion about how we can apply this in our personal businesses. Does anybody have any questions? We'll start with that. Yes, Alyssa.
When it comes to faces, how do you work with people who, and kind of like what Spencer said, who are scared or don't really want to be on camera?
Yeah.
Right? Like how do you aside from not giving them any talking parts or maybe
Sure.
touching a side angle, how do you kind of navigate that?
It takes time. You have to warm up to people. You can usually tell in a moment if someone is going to be camera ready, right? Like there's a huge difference between being photographed candidly and looking into a camera and delivering a line. And actually in my experience, I have found there's an inverse relationship between outgoing personalities and people who are good at looking into camera. It's surprising how many good actors, once they're no longer acting, are actually pretty withdrawn. Just because someone is the life of the party doesn't mean they're going to be able to hit their mark and say their lines directly to camera. It's just a whole different skill set. And so that's why in our line of work, oftentimes when we do interviews, we're not asking someone to memorize anything. We're not asking them to prepare a speech. We literally just sit down across from them and have a conversation, just like this, and then the cameras will be off to the side. And so we call that an interview format. And that's the tool that we probably use in our toolbox the most often, because it's not putting them on the spot. And most people have good things to say if you ask the right thing. And so if you're running a business where you know you need some video, but you're like, I can't prepare this, there's experts who are actually really good at that. And so talk to our friends at Pullman Marketing. I know that they can shoot an interview probably in about an hour that will give you more than enough material to last you probably a whole quarter or more of social media posts. So it doesn't have to be if you don't feel comfortable on camera, there's people like Mark who have all the confidence in the world to make amazing content over and over and over again. You don't have to all be like Mark, right? Like anyone can be on camera, you just have to get the right team together. Anybody else? Yes, Preston.
How much does platform matter? So there's like 4 or 5 major platforms diverted.
Yeah.
They're all a little different. How much does it actually matter?
It matters a lot in that it kind of doesn't matter at all in terms of differentiation. You should probably be on all of them. And I'll just give you an example. I have a side hobby where I do social media posts about civil engineering projects. Very random, I know. It's like a whole other part of my life that most people don't know about. Some of those, that's the TikTok channel I was telling you about. I get hundreds of thousands of views on TikTok and a few thousand on Instagram, and hardly any on Facebook. Guess which one of those platforms is actually going to pay me? Not the platform, but the lead that came from the platform. It's actually Facebook. So like the numbers, like you might find a high audience in one area, but you might actually get more opt-ins on another. You might actually find more relationships. You just have to sow the seed and see what sticks. And it can vary depending on your industry. But truth be told, it changes so fast. There's really no point in saying this platform good, that platform bad, because in 6 months it'll be something different. So you just have to sow the seed, toss it out there, and just see what sticks. Yeah.
What do you think about 2 people having a dialogue on video versus one person talking to the lens?
I have a lot of experience with this. It's a little counterintuitive about what's more interesting. So 2 people can be half as interesting as one in most situations. The exception is like a podcast where you have a host and you have a guest. In that situation, one person is really prepared and the other person's really interesting. And there's like a symbiotic relationship there where like the interesting person wants to get their word out. That's why they're visiting all these podcasts. And the host wants to have a good show. So they've prepared and they have good questions and they have that kind of dialogue. So not everyone can be Joe Rogan, right? Like the chances of anyone here on their first try being Joe Rogan is probably pretty low. Having one person that's just a whole lot easier to be interesting for a set amount of time. And so the situation where I would do a 2-person is where the subject matter warrants it and you have sufficient preparation that you can sustain that conversation. I almost never put myself in my interviews. Like if I'm interviewing someone, the way we typically do it, here we're going to have you be the subject. You're the person we're interviewing. I sit across about like this, and all the cameras are on her. It's not like 60 Minutes where the camera's on both, right? Because I'm not a character in this story. She's the character, and I'm going to do my best to make her look good and how I come across doesn't matter. In fact, if you were to watch my raw interviews, it would probably be very hard to watch because I ask things out of order. I'll circle back around on things. I'll play dumb a lot in my interviews. You know, like if I was interviewing Adam Jones, I might be like, you know what, aren't we just over pay-per-click advertising? Email marketing's boring. I'll say something that I know will get a rise out of them. Exactly. You know, and so you would never want to watch my half of the conversation, right? That's different than what you're picturing with the two people. And so in my experience, a two people on camera situation is harder to execute with excellence than a one person. But it's a little counterintuitive because it's like, oh, well, we can sustain a conversation. Yeah, but you both have to be interesting. Yes?
If you were to start over tomorrow and you didn't have, like, say, a bag of ideas for wherever you wanted to start, what would your process look like? And where in that process would you begin with the video or the photo, the engagement? And then as you were to expand, at what point do you delegate that process?
Well, you're asking me, and so I would delegate that process very late because I'm good at it. But I'll answer your questions in reverse. So when would I delegate? Like any small business, I would say do it yourself for as long as you can because payroll is expensive, right? But when you get to the point where you can't do it yourself, get help. Or in the case of making video, what I would do is I would get advice more than I would outsource, right? Well, for example, no one's going to make a better video about your product than you, but the team at Pullman Marketing can probably help you get it in front of more people, right? You don't have to manage every step of the process, right? If I was starting today, I probably wouldn't invest in video until I knew I had something to offer. I've seen plenty of people start with their sales pitch without actually getting their product taken care of. And like, I'm very much product before sales. And since we're talking, this whole video thing is kind of a sales technique, I would make sure I had my product first. Assuming you have a good product and you have something to offer, I would start immediately because it's never too early to build affinity with real people.
What software do you use for video editing?
We're an Adobe shop. We use Adobe, but I mean, honestly, use what you have at your disposal. If you're at the point where you have to choose between which expensive video system you're using, you're probably well past all this. For now, use what you have at your disposal. And the best thing you have is your phone. There's been more research and development put into the cameras on your phone than any other devices in the camera shop. It really is. It really is wild. You look at the difference in quality and processing from like an iPhone 10 to now. The iPhone looks the same, but the math behind those cameras are incredible. No other cameras on the market have moved that fast. Nothing at Canon, Nikon, Blackmagic, Red, nothing has moved as fast as the phone cameras. So use what you have. People ask me, how long should a video be? And regardless of the circumstances, the answer is always the same. A video should be as long as it's interesting. The moment it's no longer interesting, okay, we're done. There is no ideal length for a video. The one exception is if you're doing commercials and it has to be 29 seconds. That's a constraint, right? That's not an ideal length. That's a constraint. And so your video should be as long as it's interesting. And you don't want to take a concept that could be persuasive in 90 seconds and turn it into 5 minutes, right? Like if you can make your point shorter, that's great. There's also not a lot of correlation between the length of the video and how much work there is. I've done 90-second videos that have taken months. I've done 10-minute videos that I've done in a day, and everything in between.